Hello, my friends. It's Monday, June 2nd, 2025, and I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, your Red State refugee, and welcome to the Radical Russ Show, coming to you from Rolla J Studios in my undisclosed mountain hideaway in the beautiful state of Jefferson region of Southern Oregon.
And it goes down smooth. Hey!
On this week's smoke session, Dictator Trump makes every day Taco Tuesday. Iowa Senator B.Joni Ernst doubles down on defending death. MAGAs with buyer's remorse claim, I didn't vote for this. The World Health Organization celebrates No Tobacco Day by attacking flavors. Democratic leaders in all 4 time zones betray democratic principles. Idaho delays executions to prepare for firing squads, and my latest radical rant on the divided states of America. But before we get to all of that, I've got 3 quick hits to get to first. First of all, it is Pride Month, so happy Pride to everyone out there, except for the Target Corporation, old Target, as if Target didn't have enough problems when it went and betrayed its DEI principles. You know about that, right? Target went and said they were no longer going to do the DEI, no more diversity, equity, and inclusion, because they want to suck up to the Trump maladministration. And since they've done that, over the past 3 months, foot traffic has plummeted. Their sales have plummeted. The black community and their allies have all been boycotting Target. So I'm sure that the CEOs and the moneymakers and the shareholders there at Target were thinking, we got to find some way to get more business back. How could we do that? I know, Pride Month's coming up. Let's put out a Pride set of merchandise. And Target has done this in the past. Target has always had a vibrant and colorful Pride display with rainbows everywhere you look. You go into Target, there's rainbow, rainbow, rainbow. Well, not this year, folks. The Pride collection from Target is abominable. I've got the links up in my show notes. You can check out my feed, radicalruss.com, on Blue Sky for some of the pictures. But oh my God, it's like everything they're putting out there for Pride this year is like beige or black, and it's got like the tiniest little rainbow like in the piping, or maybe this little tiny tag on the bottom of the shirt. It's worse than if they hadn't put anything out for Pride at all. Boy, they pissed off their black base. Now they're going to piss off their gay base. I guess they're really trying to be the store for white MAGA America. We'll see how well that works out for them. Oh, and speaking of Pride, I got to say something about this comment from the White House press secretary, the liar-in-chief, Karoline Leavitt. This is unbelievable.
Educating the next generation based on skills that we need in our economy and our society. Apprenticeships, electricians, plumbers. We need more of those in our country and less LGBTQ graduate majors from Harvard University.
First of all, Karoline, it's fewer LGBTQ graduates, not less. Anyway, LGBTQ graduates, they have a major in that now? You can graduate with a degree in gay? Hey, electricians and plumbers could be gay too, Karoline. But I found the sponsor for Pride this year when I was out shopping. There is this cream that you can get for erectile dysfunction. And it's got the best name of any brand ever. It's called Eroxon. 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 I can just hear the commercial now. Get your rocks off with Eroxon. Also, quick note about the NBA Finals. My lady loves Indiana Pacers have advanced to the NBA Finals against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Boy, that's the East versus the West. Indiana in the East versus Oklahoma in the West. That's not very East and West. Could you get any teams closer to the Mississippi River? I suppose Memphis Grizzlies or New Orleans Pelicans would have been a little bit closer, but all right. Whatever. Let's see. Good luck to Indiana on this. Let's hope they win the NBA championship and make my lady love proud. Also, speaking of making us proud, Slava Ukraini, a great job by Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukrainian army. You've probably heard about this already, about how they snuck in these cargo trucks, container trucks that had false ceilings in them, and the roof would retract on command, and hidden in the ceilings of these cargo containers were these drones. And they released all the drones by remote control. The drones take off, bombed out, destroyed about a third of Russia's tactical bombers, like their nuclear bombers, took them out on the airfields. Total surprise attack. Taking down, $50 million planes with a $500 drone. This will be written about in military textbooks for years. This is one of the greatest battles. It turns out, I guess, Volodymyr Zelensky was holding some of the cards, wasn't he, Trump? One day this week, I woke up and was checking out my social media feed on Blue Sky at RadicalRuss.com, and I kept seeing all these taco memes. Donald Trump wearing a taco hat and a taco suit, and everybody talking about tacos. And well, I like tacos as much as the next guy, but I couldn't figure out what was going on. It wasn't even Tuesday, so what was happening? Well, it turns out a reporter from ABC News went and asked Trump what he thought about the latest acronym on Wall Street.
Mr. President, Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
I kick out?
Chicken out.
Oh, isn't that nice? Chicken out. I've never heard that. You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I set down to 100 and then down to another number? And I said you have to open up your whole country, and because I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff.
There is nothing so delightful as watching that video, seeing Trump in real time, realizing he has been hoisted by his own petard. He's always giving the little nicknames that always stick. He's such a master at branding people that way. And for once, it's happened to him. He is never going to escape taco. Trump always chickens out. Folks, this is our Let's Go Brandon. This is our Let's Go Brandon. We need to be making stickers and flags and hats and putting this out everywhere, because you can tell by his demeanor that he really, really hates this nickname.
6 months ago, this country was stone cold dead. We had a dead country. We had a country people didn't think it was going to survive, and you ask a nasty question like that.
You can tell he's caught because he's doing his pivot. He's pivoting to Joe Biden. Oh, Joe Biden was terrible. It's not me who's terrible. It's Joe Biden who's terrible. Pay no attention to people saying I always chicken out because the country was dead 6 months ago. Oh, my God, the country was on life support 6 months ago. Nobody thought the country would come back from 6 months ago. Well, let's just check the numbers, Donnie Taco, shall we? The Dow Jones 6 months ago was at 44,705. Today, 42,270. That's down 6.3%. The S&P 500 was at 6047. Today, it's at 5911. That's down 2.2%. The NASDAQ 21,164. Today, 21,340. Up just barely 1.9%. And the unemployment figures, 4.1% 6 months ago, 4.2% today. But folks, don't trust those figures coming out of the Trump maladministration, because we know Doge has laid off so many federal workers that the unemployment rate must be higher than that. And how about the value of the dollar? The value of the dollar on the index was 106.36 6 months ago. Today, 98.68, down 7.3%. So on all of these measurements, except for the NASDAQ, which again is pretty close to even anyway, showing us that 6 months ago we were in better shape than we are today. Not to mention the fact 6 months ago we hadn't yet pissed off all of our allies. We hadn't set upon a dangerous and diluted trade war with the rest of the world, America first becoming America alone. Donald Trump is pissed off about this TACO acronym, and he will let you know it.
And in many ways, I think we really helped China tremendously because, they were having great difficulty because we were basically going cold turkey with China. We were doing no business because of the tariff, because it was so high. But I knew that. But don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question.
Gosh, it seems like just yesterday we were having Kamala Harris promising us taco trucks on every corner. Now we've got a taco in the White House. And if somebody hasn't already set up some taco trucks on Pennsylvania Avenue and at any stop that Trump makes to try to drum up some support amongst the MAGA, they are missing a huge opportunity. Iowa Senator B.Joni Ernst was in the news this week as well. You may have already heard the clips, but the Iowa senator was giving a town hall meeting, which they have not been going so well for Republicans these days, but she braved it. Let's give her some credit for that. She went out and held a meeting with her constituents, and she was discussing the cuts that are coming to Medicare and Medicaid, the cuts that are being proposed by the so-called Big Beautiful Bill in order to fund another round of tax cuts for billionaires. She was trying to defend this, trying to say that the Medicare cuts aren't really cuts. They're really just kicking people off of Medicare who don't deserve to be on Medicare or Medicaid, I suppose. And her constituents weren't having any of it, telling her that this will lead to people dying. And let me just play the recording for you.
So when we're talking about the corrections in this reconciliation bill, again, it's corrections of overpayments and people that have not been eligible for these programs by law as it is currently written. So when you are arguing about illegals that are receiving Medicaid benefits, 1.4 million, 1.4, they are not eligible, so they will be coming off. So people are not, well, we all are going to die. So for heaven's sakes, folks. Okay, no, but
we're all going to die. Well, no shit, Senator. We all know we're going to die. We just don't want to die any quicker than we should have to. We don't want to die because we are lacking for health care that Republicans like you are trying to take away. I'm trying to defend this by saying, oh, we're taking people off who don't deserve to be on those rolls. Even if you take that at face value, even if you really believe that that's what they're doing, it still means people would die, wouldn't they? It still means people wouldn't get the health care that they need. Whether or not someone is getting that Medicare or Medicaid money through cheating in some sort of way doesn't elide the fact that without it, they would die. So they had to cheat to get some health care to not die, and you'd rather have them die. That's your point, B.Joni Ernst. And in the old days, a gaffe like this, and this is a major gaffe, saying, oh, we're all going to die, treating your constituents as if they're children, as if they don't understand that, yes, of course, we're all mortal. We're all going to die. We just don't want to have to die any earlier than we necessarily need to. Normally, in the old days, this would be a major political gaffe. This would be a career ender. This would be something for which a senator would have to do a major PR tour. They'd go on, all the different daytime talk shows, The View and such, or go on the Sunday shows and try to explain themselves. Well, what I meant by that, and, trying to walk it back a little bit. But not in the Trumpocene era. Not these days. Oh, no, you never admit you're wrong. You never back down. You never apologize. And you double down on the cruelty. This is B.Joni Ernst's response to that clip going viral about her saying we're all going to die. And I know it's not video here, but in the video, if you get a chance to see the video, you'll note she's recording this from a cemetery.
Hello, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely apologize for a statement that I made yesterday at my town hall. I was in the process of answering a question that had been asked by an audience member when a woman who was extremely distraught screamed out from the back corner of the auditorium, "People are going to die." And I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize. And I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well. But for those that would like to see eternal and everlasting life, I encourage you to embrace my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
I don't know if I've ever encountered a politician with so much disdain for their own constituents. To make a fake apology, I sincerely apologize, sarcasm dripping from that, sincerely apologizing because the members of your audience were too naive to think that people die. Like we all thought we're Highlanders or something. We're all going to live forever. No, Senator Ernst, you are so clearly trying to dodge the point. So clearly trying to dodge it shows you have no respect for your constituents whatsoever. And then to infantilize them by saying, oh, the tooth fairy. I'm glad I didn't have to bring up the tooth fairy. This is someone who does not believe she has any chance of losing her re-election bid in 2026. This is someone who believes that the state of Iowa is so reliably red, there's no way that calling out her own constituents as immature and naive, and then to go proselytize for your Christian belief, because this just shows you what the Republicans really think about us poors. That we just need to shut up and take it, accept our lot in life, go to work, make some value for the shareholders, and understand that you're all going to die someday. And when you do, you can go have your reward in heaven. Not here on earth. No, here on earth, you get to just work your fingers to the bone and drop dead because you don't have any health care. But yeah, once you get to heaven, Jesus will take care of you. Sorry, Senator Ernst, I expect a little bit more from my government than to expect the smiling sky daddy to take care of me after you've used me up and abused me. And I think the people of Iowa will show you that in the next election as well. Now that the Trump maladministration is in full effect and affecting the mass deportations now, the terrible stories are coming out of ICE raids at workplaces and daycares and people being snatched off the street by unidentified masked goons. A lot of the MAGAs out there are having buyer's remorse, a little sorry for their vote. I've been seeing some stories around the media, including one came out of the Washington Post, I believe, had this picture of a woman named Vanessa Cowart, who says, quote, "I voted for Donald Trump, and so did practically everyone here, but no one voted to deport moms," end quote. And this was, quote, posted by a fella up online on Blue Sky, Timothy Burke, at bubbaprog.lol, who says, quote, "I really, really need people to understand that they didn't vote for this, no matter how much you insist they did. Insisting they voted for this elides the information environment that led them to vote the way they did in the first place, the thing that actually needs fixing." Okay, so I can take that point a little bit. Indeed, people like Vanessa Cowart and folks that are watching Fox News and OANN and Right Side Broadcasting Network and Newsmax and all these right-wing media outlets, yes, they have been fed a diet of misinformation and propaganda. However, I could get on board with this a lot easier if Donald Trump hadn't already left 4 years worth of evidence as to what kind of president he would be in the second term. Yeah, sure, maybe you believed when all the folks were holding up those signs that said mass deportations now that he only meant criminals, that he only meant gangbangers. But you missed the word mass. In order for it to be mass deportations, it needs to be a whole lot of people. And if you really think there are hundreds of thousands or millions of Venezuelan gang members terrorizing every corner of society, then you're drinking the Kool-Aid. You're in a cult. Donald Trump left us plenty of evidence what kind of president he would be. Remember the child separations? You remember that back in 2017, 2018, the kids in cages? You remember that? You didn't think that would be on steroids in his second term when he had been saying he will be a dictator on day one? You didn't pay any attention to the Project 2025 manual, 900 some odd pages detailing exactly what they would be doing in a second term. And so far they've been following it chapter by chapter. No, you did vote for this. You absolutely voted for this. You voted for a baby in Tennessee, story I just read of a baby in Tennessee who died, was having some sort of distress, some sort of medical distress. But the person caring for the baby, a housekeeper, a nanny, if you will, domestic help, who was undocumented, who feared calling the hospital because ICE might show up, deport her, take her away. She didn't call for any medical help for that baby, and the baby died. This is what you get with your mass deportations now. And I can't help but think how this script sounds so familiar to me, because it's something I used to go over week after week, year after year when I was fighting the war on those people with certain drugs. Because throughout the war on drugs, I kept making the point that when you keep something like marijuana illegal, something that's really popular, that lots of people are using, and you make it illegal, you make those people illegal. You make them not want to confront the justice system. And I used to make the point, how many times with something going down in the neighborhood, maybe you hear some gunshots, maybe you see some cars getting broken into, and how many times does 911 not get called because the person seeing it's got a joint, the person seeing it's got a bag at the house, the person seeing it maybe has a bong, doesn't want to call the cops, doesn't want to get involved with law enforcement because if I call the cops, they might smell my weed, might want to take me away. This is why we have to be careful and judicious about what we make illegal in this country. What are actual crimes? As far as I'm concerned, actual crime is that which hurts others. Me smoking pot at home, that's not hurting anybody. Someone sneaking across the border and doing a job and contributing to society and paying taxes that they don't get the benefits from, that's one of the parts that really pisses me off in this debate, is how they say, the illegals, they're taking all the money from our social services. No, they're not. They can't get social security numbers. And even if someone's getting food stamps or getting to go see a doctor in exchange for bending over 14 hours a day picking strawberries in a field, here's something I have a little bit of knowledge of as well. When I was a young man growing up in rural Idaho, one summer I decided I wanted to make some money, and I'd go out and work in the fields because there's always field work to be done, right? And in this case, it was something they call corn topping. I don't even know if they do this anymore. They might have machines that do this now, but corn topping is when you go through the rows of corn and there's one row that is going to stay male and the rest of the rows are going to be female, or maybe I've got that backwards, whatever. But your job is to go through the rows of corn and pull off the tassels to make them male or female, or forget which. And it's tough work. You're there at daybreak, like 5 a.m, sun coming up. You bring with you a couple of milk jugs filled with water so you can have water through the day. And you're out there in the sun, in the corn dust and the pollen and the dirt, pulling off these tassels. And you do that for about 14 hours. And I did that work. I think I held out a whole 2 weeks. I think I made it a whole 2 weeks before I decided, yeah, this isn't for me. I think I'll practice my typing skills. So if those folks get some care, some health care, maybe get some food to eat, a house to live in, I got no problem with that. They're contributing more to society than any CEO is at this point. So yeah, you really did vote for deporting moms. You voted for separating family. You voted for the cruelty. Y'all chanted it at your convention. Mass deportations now. Mass deportations now. You laugh when someone gets hurt, taken out of one of their rallies there. You laugh when Trump says, oh, I'd like to punch him in the face. You like this cruelty. You wanted this cruelty. And now we're going to hang it on all of you. All you MAGAs. I got a very Lieutenant Aldo Rain from Inglorious Bastards take on this. It's way too easy for you to take off that red hat when things start getting bad. I'm not going to forget any of you that voted for this, that voted to destroy the country I love, to harm the people in it. This is all on you. Never, never forget the devastation that MAGA brought onto us. Shame on all of you who ever voted for Donald Trump, especially the second and third time. Like I said, it's not like you didn't have evidence of what a scumbag this guy is. The guy who's cheated charities and sexually abused at least 26 women, one of whom's already been adjudicated, held liable, $5 million liability, and then defamed the woman after he's held liable. There's not a single redeeming quality in Donald Trump, even just as a human being. And there's nothing you can tell me about what you thought Joe Biden was doing or what you thought Democrats were up to. Oh my God, they're going to let trans girls run in track. That justifies voting to destroy everything that was good about America. Everything that's good about America. I've talked about this before. I love this country. But you know what I love about this country is its aspiration for what it could be, not what it currently is. I've never loved America for what it currently is. I always love America for what it aspires to be. To actually be the place where all men and women are created equal. To actually be the place where all religions can live in harmony. And people without religion can live in harmony. People of all different races, colors, ethnicities, that no matter where you came from, no matter who you were born to, no matter what you believe, you can be an American. That's the beauty of America. They want to kill that. They want to kill birthright citizenship. They want to destroy immigration for everybody except for white South Afrikaners who believe in separating races. One of the things that made America so great was knowing how much aid we gave to the rest of the world, that when hungry kids or sick kids looked up and the doctor or the cook that was helping them had an American flag patch on, or the bag had the American flag on it. That's what made us great. And y'all MAGAs voted to destroy all of that. All of that because you're afraid of trans kids. You're afraid of black neighbors. You're afraid of the Muslim call to prayer. Whatever it is you're afraid of, you voted to destroy the country I love, and I will never let you forget it. This week, the World Health Organization sent me out a piece on social media that says that today, this was 2 days ago, I guess the 31st of May, today is World No Tobacco Day. And before I get too much into this, I should point out that I am Not a fan of tobacco. Don't like it at all. I don't like cigarette smoke. I grew up, my folks smoked when I was young, and I remember long rides in the car with smoke all throughout the car. I remember the smell of it all the time. I later came up and played music in bars, and so this is before, this is back in the 80s and early 90s, before all the Clean Air Acts, and so there was still smoking in bars. In fact, to this day, the state of Idaho does not have a Clean Air Act that bans smoking in bars. You can actually smoke in some bars in the state of Idaho. So I'm not a fan of smoking. Don't like it. Tobacco is awful, and I'm so glad that both my parents managed to quit smoking. And the other side of tobacco I hated, going to school at Nampa High School, all the redneck cowboys that would have their chew cups, that would come in with their little soda cans or paper cup and be spitting, tobacco spit into those cans all day. And I got inevitably, at least once a school year, some kid would find a can sitting around somewhere and take a drink of it, think it's a soda, and then get a mouthful of tobacco spit. I mean, every year it happened. I can remember vividly this happening. So I am not a fan of tobacco. However, I'm a huge fan of liberty. I'm a huge fan of freedom. And I believe smokers in this country, tobacco smokers, have gotten a raw deal for quite a while now. In the way they have been treated. I'm not for smoking, but I believe people have the right to smoke, and that it shouldn't be punished, and it shouldn't be, we shouldn't have government trying to force people one way or another as to whether or not they're going to engage in these things. And I bring this up because the World No Tobacco Day flyer or graphic, I should say, continues by saying, tobacco and nicotine products look sweet but are harmful. That bubblegum, mango, or cotton candy flavor isn't just for taste. It's a trap to get young people hooked. Don't fall for the illusion. Unmask the appeal. And then the graphic has a young lady with a lollipop in her hand, a little sweet lollipop. And then the shadow of the lollipop shows the lollipop is a vape, and the smoke coming out of the vape makes a skull. Flavors hide the truth. Don't be fooled by the lies. So I bring this up because this is again, I've heard this story before. I've run this script before, except it wasn't with tobacco. It was with cannabis. As marijuana legalization took place all across the United States in the 2010s, it was the question of the flavored gummy bears and the candies that would get kids hooked on cannabis. So they make the same claim here with the tobacco industry. They're using the flavors to hook the kids on the tobacco. Funny how this isn't a problem, though, with alcohol. I don't hear a whole lot of call about, oh, gosh, they're making alcohol. They're making vodka that tastes like bubblegum. They're making vodka that tastes like banana. They're making vodka that tastes like strawberry. Some reason there's no big cry about that being designed to hook the kids. But whether it's tobacco or cannabis, if you use any sort of flavors in your product, why, that's just to hook the kids. Because, adults hate flavor. Yes, adults hate flavor. We don't like things to be flavored. Once you turn 21, you no longer are interested in flavor. Yeah. If you're 21 or older, when you smoke a cigarette, you just want it to taste like cigarette. You don't want any other flavor whatsoever. Same with cannabis. You just want the cannabis taste. No flavors whatsoever. Only kids like flavors. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. Of course, this is ridiculous. Of course, adults like flavors. And these are products made for adults. Look, we already raised the tobacco age from 18 to 21, right? We already took all the smokes and put them behind the counters, right? We already took the smokes and locked them up. So you got to get a clerk who checks your ID before you can get that product, right? We made it a very strict rule that smokes always have to be carded. You always have to get an ID for this, right? So these are adult products. Let adults have their flavors. Same with the cannabis products. Got to show an ID to even get in the damn store, much less buy any of these products that have flavors in them. Adults like flavors. Let us have our flavors. And the other thing that happens in this debate, whenever we talk about the ban on flavors, especially when it comes to tobacco here, was it turns out that menthol is a flavor, right? That minty menthol tobacco thing. And it turns out that menthol cigarettes are overwhelmingly favored by black people. Black folks like the menthols, the cools, right? So whenever we get this talk about banning flavors, you get a pushback from the black community that says, hey, hold on. You're trying to ban something that black people like. And then the whole race argument gets into there, and it gets a little fuzzier when it comes to banning that flavor. So I've seen when they do some of these tobacco bans where they ban all the flavors. You can't have cherry flavored cigarettes or, strawberry flavored vapes or anything like that. But the menthol cigarettes get a carve out. So what's up with that? I guess flavors are okay for black adults, but not white adults. The flavors black people like are okay, but not the flavors white people like. It's ridiculous. These are adult products. Let adults have their flavors. When it comes to preventing the kids from getting addicted, stopping the kids because the kids like flavors too, gonna have to try something else. Try more education. Again, we've put the smokes behind the cabinets. We've got them locked up. We got people checking IDs. At some point, we have to recognize it's impossible to stop kids from getting their hands on something they want. But that doesn't mean we have to sacrifice the choices for adults who aren't breaking the rules, the adults who are following the laws. Don't ban flavors. As the Trump maladministration moves on, a lot of us are looking forward to 2028, the scheduled end of Trump's second term, even though he's not going away, folks. He's going to run for a third. You watch. He's going to run for a third term. I'm telling you, he's going to do it and just dare people to stop him. And I know you say the Constitution's pretty clear. 22nd Amendment's absolutely crystal clear. You can't run for a third term. And I'll just tell you that's as absolutely crystal clear as the 14th Amendment, Section 3, that says he couldn't run for office in the first place because he's an insurrectionist. It's absolutely as clear as the emoluments clauses in the Constitution that says he can't take bribes, but here he is doing it. Anyway, if it's Trump running for a third term or some other Republican running, it doesn't matter because the Democrats, it's a wide open field for who's going to be running in 2028. I told you about polls showing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as being the face of the Democratic Party. And if she should choose to run for president, I would be a full-throated endorser. I would support her all the way. I think she is exactly what this country needs. Some youth, some vibrance, someone who's actually worked a working class life, lived a working class life, knows where we're coming from, and who's unafraid to espouse a new deal, a new deal for the 21st century, Medicare for all, for example. So I would love to see that come along, but I'd also like to thank a number of Democratic hopefuls out there who are going out of their way to disqualify themselves for 2028. I think it's wonderful that they're clearing the field to make sure that they present themselves as being unacceptable to anyone who supports democratic principles. And we got one this week from each time zone in the continental U.S. Let's start on the West Coast in California, where Governor Gavin Newsom, according to Los Angeles Times, the headline reads, Governor Newsom proposes asset test for low-income and disabled Medi-Cal applicants. An asset test, more means testing. Someone's poor, we can't just give them any money, any help for their health care. We got to make sure they sell all their shit first. That's what this comes down to. These asset tests, what they have to do with, and I got some experience with this because I am a caregiver for my disabled lady love, and she's been helping out her ex-husband who is also disabled, and we have to apply for a lot of these different government programs. Like in Oregon, they call it Oregon Health Plan for Medicaid. In California, you call it Medi-Cal, but similarly, both states have these asset tests. And the idea here is that if you're going to get health care from the state, you're going to get the low-income health care assistance that you need because you have a low income. You're not bringing in a lot of money because you're disabled. You have to sell your expensive shit first. They don't want to have you living in a nice house, driving a nice car, and then claiming that you don't have enough money for health care. I've never understood this point of view. As if nobody ever falls on hard times. Maybe you were working, you had a great career going, you made some decent money. You bought yourself a house, got yourself a boat, ATV, nice car. And then you're stricken with cancer or some disability that makes it impossible for you to work. So now you've gone from, I don't know, 50,000 a year, 60,000 a year. Maybe you're doing okay, making some good money, being able to pay the bills, getting by all right. But now you're disabled and you got no income coming in. Now, up to that point, most people, if they've got any sort of savings or liquidity, got some money, they'll go ahead and use that to help pay for things. But that eventually runs out and you're going to need some assistance. And so Newsom here is proposing new standards to test for your assets, how much stuff you have. And if you got too much stuff, it's too nice, your car's too new, you got to get rid of it. You got to sell it before they'll give you any help. Why? Why do we want to do that to people? How many people are in a situation where they get sick, they get disabled, but it's a temporary situation where they're only going to be in need of help for a couple years and they can get back on their feet. They have to go back and start anew, start from ground zero, trying to rebuild their income and their assets after you force them to sell them all off. Why not just help the people out for a couple years? And then when they get back on their feet, they still got all their stuff. I mean, okay, maybe not to an extreme. Like maybe you shouldn't have 4 vacation houses and 6 cars and 2 ATVs. I can see some of this to some extent. But when you're forcing someone to give up their one car that they have to be able to work with, there's a situation that my lady love has to deal with. She was without a car. She's 100% disabled. She's on assistance. And then her father dies. And when he dies, he leaves to her his car, a GMC, pretty nice car. It's her only vehicle. It's her only way to get around. She wouldn't have been able to afford to buy a car off of her disability payments. No way. But now some government clerk wants to come along and say, oh, because your dad died and gave you a gift, you can no longer qualify for health care. We're going to let you die in the streets. Oh, unless you sell the car, but then you can't go anywhere. Democrats need to get away from this right-wing ideal of means testing everything to death. This fear that one person might be out there cheating and getting away with it. So let's make things tough on 50 other people who aren't. Needs to go away. I don't understand how Democrats can reconcile that kind of thinking with our thinking on the death penalty. The Democratic ideal on the death penalty, at least my Democratic ideal on the death penalty, is that we'd rather let 50 guilty men go free than to execute one innocent person. So why don't we think that way when it comes to benefits? We'd rather have 50 people cheating on Medicare or Medicaid than to let one person in need die without it. We've gotten so overrun by these right-wingers and their claims of waste, fraud, and abuse when it comes to the little guy, when it comes to somebody, single mom with kids, sick person with cancer, someone at the bottom rungs of society just trying to get by. The fear they might get 10% more than what they deserved. We got to shut it all down. It just rings so hollow in a country where white-collar criminals are getting away with everything they're getting away with. That there doesn't seem to be that much scrutiny for the waste, fraud, and abuse when it has 2 or more commas in it. But when it's, $50 here, $100 there, $500 there, oh, there's a lot of concern for the waste, fraud, and abuse. So thank you, Governor Newsom, for taking yourself out of the 2028 running. with that anti-democratic ideal of more means testing for sick people. Goes along with your failed podcast platforming right-wing Nazis. But he's not alone. We've got another Democrat, this one in the Mountain Time Zone, Colorado Governor Jared Polis, who, according to Kyle Clark, who's a journalist there in Denver, he writes, Governor Jared Polis has vetoed a bill banning surprise billing by ambulance companies. The bill passed the Colorado legislature by unanimous votes in both chambers. So this was a bill in Colorado. You know how the ambulance companies work. You got all these surprise billing situations, right? You don't know you're going to get billed thousands of dollars. Next thing you know, you're in massive debt because you took an ambulance ride you didn't know. I haven't got all the major details on this bill. What I do know about it, it has to do with surprise billing, and it was unanimously supported. You've got something that would help the average person, help them defray one of the biggest medical costs they can incur, the surprise billing of an ambulance. You got Republicans and Democrats unanimously in both chambers saying, let's help the people, let's get rid of this surprise billing. And you've got a Democratic governor vetoing it. And he made up some excuse. Oh, if we stop them from doing surprise billing, well, then they'll just raise their bills all across the board, and it'll hurt everybody. An argument that did not make a dent with a single legislator in either chamber. But yeah, Jared Polis has your best interests in mind. I'm sure had nothing to do with any sort of donations from anybody. I'm sure. We'll take a look. We'll find out. But on the face of it, it looks like a bad move from the governor of Colorado, who in my mind has disqualified himself from the 2028 presidential race. All right, let's head to the Midwest. In the Midwest, we've got Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Oh boy. Gretchen Whitmer, who you know was called to the White House. Trump tricked her to come to the White House for some photo op. That was the famous photo op a couple weeks ago where she was photoed holding a binder in front of her face because she was so embarrassed and didn't want to be photographed as he was signing these executive orders and saying terrible things and using her as a prop. Well, the Washington Post reports that Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer said President Trump would be breaking a promise if he went through with pardoning the two men who were convicted of plotting to kidnapping her, claiming that he pledged not to do so during a conversation last month. Yeah, that's right. The guys who were convicted of plotting to capture, kidnap Governor Whitmer, who had night vision goggles and zip ties in their car, who were ready to go, ready to kidnap the governor of Michigan. Trump has been saying he's going to pardon these guys, and Whitmer says, but you promised you wouldn't. When you talked to me, you promised you wouldn't. So, Governor Whitmer, thank you. Thank you for disqualifying yourself from the 2028 presidential field by being so politically naive you'd believe a promise from Donald Trump. And one more. Let's head out to the East time zone, where we've got Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Now, she didn't particularly do anything. It's what she's not doing right now that's disqualifying her, because, as you may or may not know, the former governor of New York State, Andrew Cuomo, is currently leading the Democratic field in the polls to become the next mayor of New York City. Andrew Cuomo could be the next mayor of New York City. Andrew Cuomo, who had some pretty serious charges of sexual assault and harassment, that these were the charges that forced him to step down as governor. You'd think Senator Gillibrand would be out there banging the gong and telling everybody to pay attention to the sexual assault charges that had been leveled against Andrew Cuomo. You'd think Senator Kirsten Gillibrand would be up in the tower waving a flag, calling press conferences every day to let people know what a sexual harasser Andrew Cuomo was, that he should be nowhere near the office of mayor of New York City. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess she just holds those kind of opinions when it comes to Senator Al Franken. When it comes to Andrew Cuomo doing stuff that was far worse. Remember, the accusations against Al Franken were that he faked taking a comedic photo of pretending to grab a sleeping woman's boobs before he was a senator, when he was still a comedian. And then there were other women who came forward. He said he may have grabbed a tush here or there. But nothing to the extent of what is being alleged against Andrew Cuomo, and yet silence from the junior senator from New York, Kirsten Gillibrand. Thank you for taking yourself out of the 2028 Democratic field. Oh, yeah, that country-based line means it's time for our Boycott Idaho segment, my regular segment where I tell you all the reasons why you should avoid the handmaid state. Now, with 70 reasons, all available at radicalruss.com/Idaho. Avoid Idaho, avoid the handmaid state, boycott the potato. No red state is more singularly associated with one product than Idaho and its potatoes. They even brag about them on their license plates. So let's pick this one red state to make an example of, to show them that we will no longer economically support these radical red state MAGA legislatures that continue to mistreat fellow American citizens. Boycott Idaho, boycott the potato, avoid the handmaid state. We begin today's segment by pointing out what happened here in the state of Oregon, where the state of Oregon has finally banned child marriage. Yeah, I was shocked too. I didn't realize child marriage was still legal here in the state of Idaho, or state of Oregon. But yes, the state of Oregon has banned child marriage. You have to be 18 years old to get married no matter what. And this stands in stark contrast to the state of Idaho and many other states throughout the United States still that allow for marriage by minors. In the state of Idaho, the rule is you can marry at age 16 or 17 with parental consent, and even at age 15 or younger with parental consent and judicial consent. A judge has to agree. And of course, these marriages to these young girls are almost always packaged in some sort of religious cult where they believe in child marriage, where the man getting married is in his 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s sometimes, marrying these young girls who are 15, 16, 17 years old, who don't know what they're getting into, who are pressured into it through the religion they were inculcated into, and in many cases throughout many of these states, don't have the power to divorce until they become adults. Yeah, imagine getting married at 15 to some old guy, and you can't get divorced for another 3 years. And how many children he might knock you up with in that span? Couple kids, maybe 3. It's terrible. So congratulations to the state of Oregon for outlawing child marriage, and let's make this go throughout the rest of the country. Let's outlaw child marriage in the state of Idaho too. I think that might be a good idea. But that brings me on to my actual Idaho story that I wanted to get to today. And that is the good news that the state of Idaho will place a pause on any future executions of death row inmates until July of 2026. No executions in Idaho for over a year. That's the good news. The bad news is the reason they're putting the pause on the executions is because it's going to take that long to retrofit the execution chamber in the prison to accommodate the newly prioritized method of execution by firing squad in the state of Idaho. And it'll take that much time also to train the executioners. Yeah, the state of Idaho made this announcement from the Department of Corrections that all executions will be taken offline during the 6 to 9 month retrofit period. And that comes in response to the Idaho Republican supermajority in the legislature. They went and passed a law, House Bill 37, and the Republican governor signed it, House Bill 37 designates firing squads as the preferred method of execution in Idaho. They had to pass this bill because for the first time last year, Idaho failed to successfully kill a death row inmate, this evil bastard named Thomas Creech, who's been on death row since I was in high school. And I'm going to my 40th reunion this month. So the state spent almost an hour trying to execute Thomas Creech by lethal injection last year, but the executioner couldn't find a vein, and they called off the execution. And it's also been difficult for the state of Idaho to secure the lethal injection drugs that they need for the executions, because probably unsurprisingly, pharmaceutical companies don't really want to be known for their products killing people. It's weird, isn't it? And this has led to prison officials trying to make roadside drug deals for the lethal injection drugs. I told you this on a previous episode. They were actually out in the middle of the country out there in southern Ada County. They've got the Idaho Correctional Institutes out there, the big prison. And by the way, just as a little aside, don't you just love that euphemism? Department of Corrections? Like prisoners or some AP English essay that just needs editing. We're just going to correct it a little. Anyway, the corrections officials out there couldn't get any of the lethal injection drugs, so they actually were making roadside drug deals. They met with like a guy in an unmarked van, getting them the lethal injection drugs and not specifying which company they came from. And when the two companies in the United States that make the drugs were asked, one company denied it and the other company didn't say anything. So draw your own conclusions. But yeah, roadside drug deals for lethal injection drugs. So as far as Idaho is concerned, well, bullets are cheap and plentiful. The hell with the lethal injection drugs. Let's just have a firing squad. So going to take them 6 to 9 months to refit the execution chamber to be set up for firing squads. That means Idaho could be ready for a firing squad execution for the 4th of July, 2026, to celebrate America's 250th birthday. What better way to celebrate what America has come in 250 years than to line someone up and shoot them dead in front of witnesses? Hell, why even have a firing squad? Let's go for this. Let's make this a spectacle. How about just blow them up? Yeah, put them in a chair, set, a couple pounds of TNT underneath them, and just blow them up. Don't even need a firing squad. Just need one guy with a little lever, right? Just blow them up. Oh, I know. How about instead of a firing squad, we could have this big cauldron, like a big tub, huge tub of acid. And we could just drop the person we're executing just right into the acid and just let them melt away. Why don't we do that? Oh, because it's cruel and unusual? Because it's crazy? Because blowing people up is cruel and unusual or crazy? How is it any more cruel or crazy than a firing squad? Aren't we supposed to be evolving in this country? Wasn't firing squad something that we got past in this country? Hell, bring back the gallows. Let's just hang people. Hang them in the square. Let's do it all publicly. It's an American tradition, after all. I've seen all of those lynching postcards. And people would make a picnic out of it. Have a big shindig. Potluck. Yeah, we could put a guy in a chair to blow him up and have a big potluck. Why don't we just do that? Why? Because we're supposed to be a civilized country, that's why. Because we've got an 8th Amendment that rejects cruel and unusual punishment. And I know we're a country that came up in the 18th century, and I know the Constitution has the penalty of death for treason. I know we're a country that had hangings and shootings throughout our history. But I believe we should evolve past that. And as just as it might be to execute an evil bastard like Thomas Creech, and let me underscore absolutely, Thomas Creech is an evil bastard. If anyone deserves a death penalty, this guy does. But I can never support a death penalty in any justice system that isn't 100% infallible. If you can show me the justice system in Idaho or any other state or at the federal level, if you can show me that justice system is 100% perfect, that it is never, ever convicted someone who was innocent. If you can show me that justice system, then I will support the death penalty in that justice system. But knowing that our current justice system is fallible, knowing that innocent people have not only been convicted, but that innocent people have been executed, the death penalty is an abomination and it must go. Today, for my radical rant, I want to talk a little bit about the divided states of America. Talking about state separatist movements, because out here in Southern Oregon, I live at the juxtaposition of two of these state separatist movements, these movements to carve new states, 51st state, if you will, in the United States. The first is the State of Jefferson movement. And that began in earnest in the 1940s when the rural mountainous counties of Southern Oregon and Northern California proposed forming a new state called Jefferson because they felt disconnected and unrepresented by the more liberal and populous parts of their states. There's another movement here that encompasses Southern Oregon called the Greater Idaho Movement. And this is a 21st century movement that proposes to move the southern and eastern counties of Oregon into the state of Idaho. And 14 counties have already voted on and approved this idea. These separatist movements exist all throughout the United States. Some propose to carve themselves new states out of existing ones, like Jefferson. Others propose redrawing existing state borders, like Greater Idaho. Then there are the statehood movements for the territories, like Puerto Rico or the District of Columbia. In every case, the separatists feel like they're not getting proper representation, whether that be in the form of the rural-urban divide, like Southern Oregon doesn't like Portland, or a geographic and cultural divide. And amid these calls from some to not just separate into new states, but also to secede as new countries, something we hear out of Texas every now and then, and it's something Marjorie Taylor Greene has called a national divorce, that we ought to have a national divorce between the red states and the blue states. And it led me to wonder, why isn't there a greater call nationwide to subdivide America into more states? Why shouldn't states, especially the large Western ones, why shouldn't they be smaller and be more responsive to their respective populations and cultures? It's already been done. There's historical precedent for this. The western counties of Virginia separated to form West Virginia during the Civil War, for instance. And all that has to happen, according to the Constitution, is that the legislatures of the affected states and the U.S. Congress have to agree to the separation. Now, before the Civil War, as the United States was being carved out of all those western territories, the issue of slavery dominated the issue of statehood. Would the new state be slave state, or would the new state be a free state? So when our forefathers were carving out the new states out of these territories, they did so in a delicate balance so that neither side would gain a political advantage. And we get, bleeding Kansas and Missouri compromises, all these different things that happen because of that. And if we tried to do this today, there would be a similar federal resistance to carving out new states, but this would be in the form of the red-blue Republican-Democrat divide. For instance, if you create Jefferson by carving out part of Oregon and Northern California, well, that's going to create two new Republican senators. And the area is already represented by a Republican in the House. But the two new Republican senators for Jefferson would nullify the votes of the two Democratic senators from Oregon that would still be there. So there'd be three new Republican votes in the Electoral College as well, and Oregon would likely lose an electoral vote. So why would Oregon's legislature approve that? Why would they choose to surrender so much political power by approving of Jefferson? And there would also be a political resistance in the states themselves. Got to think about that too, because let's take the example of Greater Idaho. If the eastern Oregon counties all separated to join Idaho, the residents in eastern Oregon who are used to no sales tax would suddenly be slapped with a 6% Idaho sales tax. And marijuana would instantly become illegal in Eastern Oregon, and all the tax revenue and jobs from growing and selling pot would disappear. So why would Oregon's legislature choose to surrender so much economic benefit by approving of Greater Idaho? So these and many other issues make political separatism in the United States kind of seem like a pipe dream. But you know what? Pipe dreams are my specialty. And as crazy as that sounds, separating into new states, does it sound as crazy as a racist, rapist, felon, fraud, draft dodger, insurrectionist president openly accepting bribes from media companies in exchange for approval of business mergers? Does it sound as crazy as trying to get bribes from the mothers of convicted felons in exchange for pardons? Does it sound as crazy and impossible to imagine as an anti-vaxxer in charge of public health, a drunk abuser in charge of the military, a conspiracy theorist in charge of the FBI, a Russian asset in charge of national intelligence, and a puppy murderer in charge of the border? In other words, since nothing is too politically impossible to imagine these days, here's my imagination run wild on how we get to 85 U.S. states through state separatist movements. And if you go to my blog at radicalruss.com, the post is up there, and you can see not only this entire essay, but also what the U.S. flag would look like with all these new states. So let's get it started. Let's pretend that Trump's second term is a complete disaster. I guess we don't really have to pretend, but it's an epic disaster for Trump's second term. And so the voters sweep the Democrats into the White House, the Congress, and the Senate with trifecta power. Control over the House, the Senate, and the presidency with a level not seen since Barack Obama's first term, when he had a plus 78 vote Democratic House, a plus 16 vote Democratic Senate, which later became filibuster proof for 72 working days, a plus 7% popular vote mandate, and a 69% approval rating. And let me pause for a minute. You did realize Obama was that popular in 2009, right? That he had 78 votes in the House, 16 votes in the Senate, 7% popular vote, and a 69% approval rating, and yet didn't codify Roe v. Wade. Anyway, let's just assume the Democrats get that kind of power again, and this time, learning the lessons from Obama not executing the power that he held, they decide to start wielding their power to build themselves more power. They actually do what Republicans would do in the same circumstance. And the first thing the Democrats should do to accrete more power to themselves is make Washington, D.C. a state. Washington, D.C., who's had taxation without representation on their license plates because they don't get to vote on the budgets. They don't get to vote in the power of the purse. They don't have representation in the United States Congress. They don't get a senator, and they get one non-voting delegate. So, make D.C. a state. It's already got more people in it than Wyoming. D.C. will certainly agree to it. So, Democrats with trifecta power in 2029 could easily make Columbia the 51st state. Now, to get this through the Congress, it has to pass the House with a majority vote, and technically only has to pass the Senate with a majority vote, but then there's the filibuster, so they'd have to get 60 votes to get past the filibuster, and you know Republicans would filibuster making D.C. a state. But let's pretend we get past that. Columbia's the 51st state. There's 2 new Democratic senators and 3 more Democratic votes in the Electoral College. The success of making D.C. a state would renew the push for the territory of Puerto Rico to become a state. They've tried many times. And so, with 2 more Democratic senators being added from D.C., it's now easier to make the push to get the majority votes necessary for Puerto Rico, and we get Puerto Rico as the 52nd state. And understand, folks, that Puerto Rico as a state might not be a guarantee for the Democrats. Puerto Rico's got interesting politics, and they could just as easily split their delegation and have 1 Republican senator, 1 Democratic senator. We'll see. Well, let's say Democrats exercise the power. Now we got 52 states with Colombia and Puerto Rico. Well, maybe there's a backlash to this. Maybe the Republicans are successful in the next term in 2032 getting the power back. And they get trifecta power back. Now, they're upset because Democrats went and added 2 more states, which gave them 4 more Democratic senators. So the Republicans activate the Texas Tots Clause. Now, this is interesting. When I was doing the research on this, on how to add states, I did not realize this. So I'm going to let you all know. When Texas was admitted to the Union in 1845, it was a country. It was the Republic of Texas. It was a separate country. So it wasn't added to the United States like other territories were. The Western territories like California and Oregon and all that, right? Texas was admitted by treaty. And in that treaty, there is a clause that allows Texas to subdivide itself into a total of 5 states. And it does not require congressional approval. That's right. Part of the deal for Texas being admitted was the United States gave Texas alone, the right to subdivide itself into at least 4 more states for a total of 5. And with the new senators from D.C. and Puerto Rico, they decide it's time to pull the trigger on the Texas Tots Clause. And now we get North Texas, East Texas, South Texas, West Texas, and Texlahoma. And now the United States has 56 states. And you could probably imagine most of the 10 senators from what used to be the state of Texas and is now 5 states of Texas, most of those senators would probably be Republican. So the pendulum will have swung back with 10 new Republican senators. Maybe 9, maybe 8, maybe, because some of those Texas states have some large cities in them. But the United States has 56 states. Well, now that there's all these new Republican senators from Texas, there'll be a push to get more Democratic states once again, just like it happened in the Civil War. We added some free states, we got to add some slave states. It's going to happen with these state separatist movements. So the other 4 territories begin arguing for their statehood. Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, the Virgin Islands, and American Samoa. 4 more territories. Let's pretend they all managed to get their statehood. And again, it wouldn't be a necessary gain of Democratic senators in those cases. They all have their own politics as well. But at the end of all that, the United States would have 60 states. That'd probably be about where it stops, because those are the easiest new states to create, especially those new Texas Tot states. So at this point, we've only converted the Texas states and the United States territories. Well, let's suppose we move forward to 2036. Democrats get back into the White House. They got a Republican House. And in the state of California, which is now jealous over what Texas has done, the state of California puts forth a citizen initiative to split California into 6 states. And this is something that's been tried in the past. Suppose it succeeds, you'd end up with a North California, Central California, South California, West California, Silicon Valley, and Jefferson. And at that point, we'd be at 65 states. But there are other state separatist movements out there. Let's pretend they all start to gain some movement as well. We could have the Southern Oregon counties joining that new Northern California state of Jefferson, the Eastern counties of Oregon joining Greater Idaho. There's been a push up in Washington state where Eastern Washington and Northern Idaho would merge to form a state called Lincoln. There's been a move in Nevada to separate the state of Nevada from Clark County, where Las Vegas is held, and that would create the state of New Nevada. Activists in Utah, in the southern counties of Utah, have been pushing to form the state of Deseret. And the Navajo Nation in the Four Corners region of Arizona, the largest Indian reservation in the United States, petitions for its own statehood, becoming the first Native American state of Navajo land. And then the southernmost counties in Arizona, they revolt and form Baja, Arizona, and the United States now has 70 states. Let's move to the East Coast. Out on the East Coast, there's been calls for separating New York City and Chicago from their states. Of course, New York City, 8-9 million people, would be one of the largest states on its own. And of course, has quite a different set of politics and issues than the rest of upstate New York. Chicagoland could do the same thing, separating Cook County from the rest of Illinois. There was a call for Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, the islands off the coast of Massachusetts, to leave Massachusetts and join Rhode Island. And out there on the peninsula, shared by Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware, there have been calls to make a new state of that peninsula called Delmarva. And with that, we'd have 72 states in the United States, with the addition of New York City and Chicagoland. In New Jersey, South Jersey would separate and form its own state. Northern Virginia, the Nova region, could form its own state. The areas of southwestern Pennsylvania, western Kentucky would join with West Virginia to form the new West Sylvania. And the rural areas of northern Maine break away and form Acadia. With that, we would have 75 states. In the South, the success of the first Navajo state would lead other ethnic groups to believe they should start having their own states. The Black-dominated South Georgia, the southern part of Georgia, forming its own state. The Hispanic-dominant South Florida, forming their own state. And the Cajun counties of the Gulf coasts of Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, forming Orleans, would leave us with 78 states. Back west, in the Intermountain West, there's been calls to separate eastern Montana from the rest of Montana. Northern Wyoming and western South Dakota and southeastern Montana forming Absaroka, and the disaffected counties in Nebraska's Panhandle joining Wyoming. This would leave us with 80 states. Heading back to Illinois, with the carve-out of Cook County and Chicago out of Illinois, other parts of the state decide they want to fracture as well. The states of South Illinois, and on the western counties of Illinois, the state of Forgotten-Ya. And the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, the UP, which has always considered itself somewhat of a separate region, would create its own state of Superior. U.S. would now have 83 states. And finally, the last historical separatist movements to come to fruition are the breakaway states of North Colorado and West Kansas, and that would leave us with 85 states. I know, it's a pipe dream, it's crazy, but every single one of those new states that I just listed for you, with the exception of Orleans, is an actual separatist movement that has been attempted in the United States of America. And if you'd like links for more of the historical information about those separatist states, check out my blog on the issue, RadicalRuss.com.
You roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
All right, folks, that's all the time we've got for this week. The Radical Russ Show is produced, directed, researched, written, recited, posted, and catered by me, Radical Russ Belville, and governed by Creative Commons Share-alike licensing. News clips and social media posts are reproduced under fair use copyright laws for commentary and analysis. My main theme is We Love the Herb by Herbal Nation, and interstitial music is by me and my drum machine. And now for our post-credits scene. One of the things I really enjoy doing on Saturdays is joining up with folks on Sirius XM's 70s on 7 channel for a little thing we do called hashtag AT40. It's where we all listen to the replay of Casey Kasem's American Top 40 from this week in the 70s and make comments about the music as we are hearing them. And this week on the AT40, I was coming up with what I call home run hitters. And a home run hitter in my mind is a person who has been a hit maker with 3 different bands and as a solo artist. Now, this came up because of home run hitter Paul Carrack. He was the vocalist from the group Ace for the song How Long, with the group Squeeze and the song Tempted, and the group Mike and the Mechanics with the song The Living Years, and he also had a solo hit. So Paul Carrick has had a hit with 3 different bands, Ace, Squeeze, and Mike and the Mechanics, and as a solo artist, and I was wondering what other home run hitters are out there. And so I've got a few for you. Eric Clapton with the Yardbirds, Derek and the Dominoes, and Cream. Chris Cornell with Soundgarden, Temple of the Dog, and Audioslave. Neil Young with Crazy Horse, Buffalo Springfield, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. And Chris Hillman with the Byrds, the Flying Burrito Brothers, and the Desert Rose Band. So there you go, 5 home run hitters I can think of. If you can think of any other home run hitters, people who have had a solo hit and a hit with 3 bands, let me know at RadicalRuss.com on Blue Sky. Also got word that the actress from Euphoria, Sydney Sweeney, has broken off her engagement of 3 months, which means still have a chance. There's still a chance. And finally, a goodbye to Loretta Swit, the actress from MASH who played Hot Lips Houlihan. You know, as a kid growing up in the 70s, MASH was on my TV every week. I grew up with the 4077th, and sad to see such a great actress and activist. She was a fantastic activist for animals and other causes. Sad to see her go. Loretta Swit, dead at the age of 83. Also dying this week was Harrison Ruffin Tyler. Harrison Ruffin Tyler owns the distinction of having been the last surviving grandson of the 10th president of the United States. President Tyler, who was last president in 1845, who was born in 1790. A guy born in 1790's grandson just died at the age of 96. Yeah, President Tyler apparently had kids well into his 60s, and then one of those kids had a kid in his 70s. That kid was Harrison Ruffin Tyler, and he just died at the age of 96. So someone with a tie all the way back to the beginning of the United States has just passed away. That's just amazing to me. You can contact me by email at radicalruss@gmail.com. Call my message line at 877-RUSS-420. That's 877-877-420. And reach me on social media on Blue Sky as radicalruss.com. And nowhere else. No Twitter, no X, no Instagram, no Facebook, no WhatsApp, no Snapchat. All on Blue Sky, baby. You can support this podcast financially by donating to Radical Russ on Venmo, Rad Russ on Cash App, or via PayPal on my website at radicalruss.com. Get this podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, my website, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and until next week, take care of each other.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you